naman po. Naday po sa mga messenger.
Thank you so much to the HNU Chorale. To welcome us all in this morning's activity, let us all give a virtual round of applause to the very energetic and dynamic President of the Holy Name University, Father Roel Alero SVD.
Good morning, everyone. At the onset, I would like to recognize the following people. Dr. Ernesto Golosino, our first presenter. Dr. Prisciliano Itzavian, Professor H. Uy, our second presenters. Dr. Florita Acero and Dr. Ernesto Golosino, the third presenters. And Dr. Maria Paz Espiritu and Dr. Ernesto Golosino, the fourth presenters, as well as our distinguished and invited reactors this morning, Dr. Bonifacio Quirog, Dr. Josefino Ronquillo, Attorney Lucas M. Nunag, and Father Jose Conrado Estafia. I would like to recognize as well all our participants this morning coming from the various sectors of Holy Name University, as well as from other educational institutions around the province. To all of you, welcome to this research colloquium of the College of Business and Accountancy. I understand that because this is the College of Business and Accountancy, we are overwhelmed by the number of participants coming from the College of Business and Accountancy, led, of course, by the very energetic and equally dynamic Dean, Dr. Gemma J. Hai. I am hoping that in this first leg of our research colloquium, we're going to have an engaging, learning, and intellectually stimulating exchange, and that we are going to be able to enjoy each other's company. So with that, again, I welcome you all and good morning. Thank you, Ma'am Emily.
Thank you, Father Lero, for gracing our affair with your time and cheerful disposition. Let me now call on Father Romilo Mapaye SVD, the Vice President for Academic Affairs of Holy Name University, to tell us more about the purpose of our activity this morning.
Thank you, Ma'am Emily. My dear colleagues, faculty members, especially the presenters in our distinguished reactors, students, guests, and friends from Bohol Island State University, University of Bohol, Mater Dei College, and Bohol Association of Catholic Schools. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is with great excitement that all of you are here on this year's first research colloquium in our institution, the Holy Name University. But I would particularly thank the Office of the Center for Research and Publications, headed by Dr. Maria Paz Espiritu, for great effort with challenging encouragement for making this event possible. I should say that this colloquium is certainly our institutional program, having seen our enthusiasm on the presentation of researchers from our loyal faculty members. This year, our research colloquium series are scheduled on this day with the College of Business and Accountancy, and the following 3 consecutive Tuesdays of the month of October. Certainly, I am confident that this research colloquium as part of our institutional program will challenge all of us to be always inspired, writing, researchers. And I am too confident with our faculty members who have a lot of ideas, knowledge, and information sharing for the growth and development of our university. Our intention in putting this colloquium together is to bring everyone, especially our faculty members who work and share with each other on their fieldwork related challenges that they will present. I sincerely hope new ways of thinking will emerge from collaborations. Today, this whole morning is prepared for the faculty members of the College of Business and Accountancy to present their researchers sharing their knowledge on different studies they had faithfully written. On every presentation, the floor is given for the reactors, and after all presentations, with the reactors. Open forum will be followed. My dear colleagues, friends, and guests, let this virtual gathering for this institutional research colloquium here at Holy Name University be blessed with the grace of our almighty loving God for the success of this event. Have a pleasant day witnessing this activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Mapaye. You and Father Liro's presence this morning is greatly appreciated. Before we proceed with the presentations, let me share to you some of the house rules that we would like to implement and observe in this morning's activity. To the presenters, we would like to remind you that you are each given only 20 minutes to present your research, while the reactors are given 10 minutes as well. Time limits shall be strictly enforced to ensure that you would be able to finish on time. A bell shall be rung within the 15-minute mark of your presentation to remind you to wrap up your presentation. Yes, Ma'am Pat, we heard your bell. Okay. An open forum shall also be done towards the end of the activity. So if you have any questions for any of our presenters, please feel free to ask them later. So for now, let us all give a virtual round of applause to the first presenter. He is a full-time professor of the College of Business and Accountancy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all give a round of applause to Dr. Ernesto Golosino.
Good morning, Father Lero. Good morning, Father Mapaye, to our Dean, Dr. Gemma J. Hai, and to the Research Center, to our dear reactors, guests, students, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My research is entitled The Incompatibility of Game Theory and Kyoto Protocol, and this is on a cross-context approach. The introduction. Let me begin my presentation with the definition of terms. The Kyoto Protocol is an agreement of nations to conserve Mother Earth. This is actually an offshoot of the emerging problem about ozone layer depletion. However, since this is an agreement that involved so many nations, one of the reasons why it dragged on its implementation is the issue on game theory. Game theory is a concept in economics. This pertains to each party in a contract where there is always an incentive to betray or not follow the agreement. Thus, in a game theory, there is always a greater incentive to cheat or betray in the agreement. But if betrayal is resorted to, in the end, it leads to lower payoff among all parties. And in this case, the environment and the entire human race as well. As to Kyoto Protocol, these are the profile of the participants in Kyoto Protocol. It is named Kyoto Protocol because the agreement happened in Kyoto, Tokyo, Japan. There are three parties in Kyoto Protocol. The Annexed One, which is composed of highly developed nations, the first world. This is actually spearheaded by the United States of America, being the convener. But funny to note, it was the one who did not ratify the Kyoto Protocol. Annex 2 is still the highly developed nations, but this pertains to the emerging economies like the Middle East nations. The rest of the nations are considered non-annex members. This pertains to less developed countries or the poor countries. So for the introduction of my research, it is a fact that the issue on global warming is not a private matter because the adverse effect of this accrue to all of us. It's actually political in application since climate change is a magnetic force that convenes world leaders to act on the matter. And the reality on global warming can be handed from generation to generation. The Kyoto Protocol was adopted on December 11, 1997. But amazing to note, it took 8 years for nations to finally follow, or in the legal language, ratify the agreements of Kyoto Protocol. Now, the methodology of my research, I use secondary data, obviously coming from the highest institution for research, which is the Institute for Science Information Databases. And of course, from the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the body that governs the Kyoto Protocol. A statement of the problem. First, who should enforce Kyoto Protocol? Second, what are the incentives and disincentives in complying and defying Kyoto Protocol? Third, world leaders are fully aware of the effects of global warming, and this will adversely affect all species on Earth. But what pushed them to remain lukewarm about this reality? So to answer these problems, the following are the findings. Since the approach of my research is on the tenor of game theory, I presented the result in a manner that there are two generic parties, two players, country A and country B. So the first issue, because the ultimate end of Kyoto Protocol is the reduction of the emission of greenhouse gases. So there are only two main issues in Kyoto Protocol: to reduce emissions or not to reduce. So country A, if they opted to reduce greenhouse gases, this is actually expensive on the point that this will lead them to overhaul productive processes that will make their products so expensive around the world. And in the language of global trade, this will be a disadvantage. If country B will also follow the same, so both of the nations will reduce greenhouse gases, they will not get the highest reward, because that's why I only assigned a figure 3.3, because this subscription to the ultimate invitation of Kyoto Protocol, though sublime and beautiful from their end. However, if they subscribe to this, they end up overhauling their productive processes. Thus, there is always an incentive for somebody to cheat, and that is not to reduce greenhouse gases. Because by staying in the status quo, this would mean that they will not change productive processes, and they still make their product abroad cheaper than those nations which turn around methods of production into environmental processes. That's why, to the last point of the quadrant, if both nations, after knowing that the best opportunity is to betray from the agreement and not to reduce greenhouse gases, if they will use that strategy under game theory, both nations will not reduce greenhouse gases. They will not overhaul productive processes, and in that case, it renders the call of Kyoto Protocol futile. Who will suffer in the end? Human race. Second findings. In game theory, there is always the strategy known as the game of wait and see, because you are always to anticipate the move of your adversary. So still two nations, just to put them in actual situation. Country A, country B. Actually, country A would pertain to Annex 1 nations, because under Kyoto Protocol, Annex 1 nations are mandated to reduce greenhouse gases. But the non-annex nations, the less developed nations, are there just as an observer to reduce greenhouse gases or not. So in this case, if country A will ratify, meaning follow Kyoto Protocol, good. If country B will do the same, because that is the ultimate goal of Kyoto Protocol. But again, there is an incentive for cheaters, and that is not to ratify. So in this case, if Annex 1 nations will ratify Kyoto Protocol, embrace the call of the protocol, it will change productive processes to make it environmental friendly. But if less developed nations will not do the same and betray in the agreement, because in the first place, they are not mandated, but they are invited to do, it is to their advantage. So again, there is always an incentive to cheat. That's why United States, in the end, did not ratify Kyoto Protocol because they realized that if they change productive processes and overhaul it to make it friendly to environment, it's quite expensive. Leaving other nations not ratifying, they will have an advantage because their products are cheaper abroad. United States of America to embrace Kyoto Protocol. The third results, the subdivision of parties. This is actually the main defect of Kyoto Protocol because nations are not equally in the same ground. Annex 1 and Annex 2 nations are mandated to follow the agreement, while non-annex nations are left on their own. So the bottom line of everything, there is a sterile ground. There is a potent ground to betray in the agreement. Another findings, table 4, free rider and negative externality. In the lingua of economics, negative externality would mean a bystander effect, that if other nations will keep on polluting their environment, the adverse effect of pollution will not stay in their country because pollutants are tiny particles. It will travel all throughout. Across my reading, I come across a funny discovery of a researcher. He said, typhoons in general are great neutralizers of pollutions because when there are typhoons, the pollutants from one country will travel to another country. Exactly correct. And that is the reason why in negative externality, if United States will keep on polluting its environment, the particles of pollution will travel all throughout the world. This is the reason why USA and Russia remain adamant in ratifying Kyoto Protocol. This is also the reason why many highly developed nations in Europe abandoned their practice of overhauling productive processes into environmental friendly manner because they realize that if they keep their environment clean while their neighbors are not, still the pollutants will traverse to their boundaries. Findings number 5, the clean development mechanism. This is another defect in the protocol which I discovered because under this manner, highly developed nations, when they can actually meet the quota, because in the lingua of Kyoto Protocol, highly developed nations, the Annex 1 and Annex 2, are given a specific quota. The moment they can meet the quota or target of their greenhouse gases emission limit, they are allowed to trade their excess. So this is what is known as carbon trading. So take the case of UK. UK was at the start quite efficient in embracing Kyoto Protocol, so they were able to meet their quota. In excess of what is required of them, they are allowed to trade their emission limit. So they can trade their excesses. So this makes again Kyoto Protocol a funny agreement because if I clean my environment and I have excess as to what I am allowed to pollute, I can sell it to my neighbor. So this tantamount to telling my neighbor, you have the right to pollute because you are paying me carbon trading emission. This is actually the content of the earlier slide lumped together on the international emission trading, where nations who are good in cleaning their environment and if they have excesses, they are allowed to trade their carbon. Actually, based on my research, the number one buyer of excesses of the quota set by Kyoto is China. So that's why one researcher said, Kyoto Protocol simply empowered China to pollute more because China has the right to buy the excesses of other nations. Another area in Kyoto Protocol, which is the reason for its failure, is the joint implementation. Simply stated, highly developed nations can work hand in hand to clean the environment. But again, this comes in the issue of free rider, because when one exerts much effort to clean the environment, others can simply free ride at that effort and will not exert more effort. In the end, this renders the agreement again useless, because many highly developed nations simply free ride from a dedicated member. Second to the last slide, the issue on Kyoto Protocol at the end of the day is it fossil fuel or renewable energy? Obviously, it must be renewable energy. But again, this requires a paradigm shift. This is a very expensive affair. Take the case of Russia and United States. If it will honestly embrace to the call of renewable energy, it has to spend billions of dollars to overhaul present productive processes. And by pursuing renewable energy, they will end up spending much money, while their neighbors are still using fossil fuel, spending less cost and money for their production, making their price competitive in the price of their products competitive in the global arena. And to end my presentation, in conclusion, even without this research, we are all aware that the preservation and conservation of Mother Earth is everyone's business. This is in the concept of intergenerational accountability. The introduction of collective effort is actually a noble affair. However, at the end of the day, there is always an incentive to betray in the agreement, because again, the United Nations framework for climate change has no absolute power to punish those who betray the agreement. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you, Dr. Golosino, for your presentation. And to react would be the Secretary of the Sangguniang Panlalawigan of the Province of Bohol. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Dr. Bonifacio Quiroga.
Thank you, Ma'am Emily. Do I sound loud and clear?
Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, Father President, Father Lero, Father Milo, Dean Gemma, Ma'am Patpat, and the rest of the administrators, faculty, staff, and students. I understand there are also students of other schools, and they are quite lucky that our institution, the Holy Name University, is giving them this chance to share with us academically. At the outset, I'd like to congratulate Dr. Golosino for his courage in daring to take on or take up such a huge issue as climate change. In fact, now it's no longer called climate change, it's called climate emergency or climate crisis. Even the Greenpeace International Environmental Climate Change Activist Organization has expressed its appreciation to the House of Representatives Committee on Climate Change, chaired by no less than our alumnus from the HNU College of Law, Representative Edgar Chato. He chairs the House Committee on Climate Change, and last November of 2020, he, along with Deputy Speaker Lauren Legarda, adopted House Resolution number 1377, declaring a climate and environmental emergency to ensure enhanced and coherent climate actions in the executive and legislative agenda of our government. So that's how important this issue is. And among the components of that resolution is to call on major carbon emitters locally and abroad to take responsibility for climate change, reinvest in renewable resources and sustainable energy, as well as encourage local governments to issue climate change emergency declarations. And I'm proud that I think, was it last year or the other year already, our Holy Name University showcased its practices, green practices that in our calendar. Yeah, and I'm sure this is continuing as a policy. So before I move on to the results, my comments on the results, I have to academically point out some of the problems, technical problems that I saw. For example, in the title, it is supposed to be the incompatibility of game theory and the Kyoto Protocol, but the statement of the problem says it is meant to determine the reasons why Kyoto Protocol failed. And I understand it turned out that in the study, the game theory was instrumental in understanding the entire problem of the Kyoto Protocol. So it's not, in that sense, it's not incompatible. it's a useful tool. So the problem technically is just that, and I understand that's the difficulty in utilizing desk research, because those sources that you find tend to make a bias or turn a bias in your study. For example, the sources here mentioned those who are into subscribing in the neoliberal capitalist view, which is, of course, giving importance to profit over other concerns, like, you know, the survival of humanity, if you will not do something about climate crisis or climate emergency. So moving on to the results, this is actually very instructive, and I also appreciate the effort of Dr. Golosino in using the game theory, because the game theory has two games that it presents, no? The cooperative games and non-cooperative games. And in the cooperative games, the rules are clear. So the players have no problem of determining who wins or who doesn't win. But in non-cooperative games, in which there is no external authority to impose a clear set of rules, which is what's happening in the Kyoto Protocol, because in the first place, the UN itself has the UN body that negotiated the whole agreement has no, it was also pointed out well by Dr. Golosino, it has no power to sanction the parties of the agreement. So, well, that's the nature of the United Nations, except if the members of the Security Council, which are only 5, no? China, United Kingdom, the USA, France, and Russia, only if any one of them or the 5 of them will agree to such agreement, will there be sanctions on certain violations. But if one of them does not, in which case here the United States itself did not sign the agreement, so that's a clear signal that it's not going to succeed as an agreement. So that's the nature of the United Nations. So, but by and large, it is really very good lesson for all of us, because game theory is useful in all our businesses, our negotiations, even in legislation or policies in school, even in university. So in this case, it should be a clear lesson to us that when we enter into situations, and we should set clear rules, impose clear rules, and in this manner, the game theory can be, I mean, the negotiations can be clear. And what I appreciate so much about the study of Dr. Golosino are his conclusions. No, he pointed out no one can build walls in order to prevent clean air from circulating around the earth. And on the other hand, that's the reality. But on the other hand, there is no device which will prevent pollutants from spreading around. But those players who are
our reactor seems to have encountered a technical difficulty. So while waiting for him to be back online, let me remind all the participants to change their Zoom name handles according to the prescribed format. So indicate the name of your institution, and then followed by your last name and first name. Also, I would like to remind the students to not clutter or chat stream with your names, because Google form link was encoded earlier in our chat group. That is where you can log in your attendance for this morning. I also would like to remind everyone that there will be an open forum happening towards the end of our activity this morning. Should you have any questions to any of the presenters, you will be given an opportunity to do so. It has come to our attention that there was a power interruption, which could explain why our reactor was suddenly cut off. Let me now proceed to presenting the virtual certification that we would have given to our reactors from the Center for Research and Publications of HNU. The certificate reads as follows: Certificate of Appreciation. This certificate is presented to Dr. Bonifacio Quirog as reactor of the research entitled The Incompatibility of the Game Theory and Kyoto Protocol during the Research Colloquium held on September 28, 2021 via Zoom, given this 28th day of September 2021, signed Father Ruel F. Lero, SVD, MAT, PhD, University President. A certificate of appreciation is likewise given to our presenter, Dr. Ernesto Golosino. The certificate reads as follows. Certificate of Appreciation. This certification is presented to Dr. Ernesto Golosino as presenter of the research entitled The Incompatibility of Game Theory and Kyoto Protocol during the Research Colloquium held on September 28, 2021 via Zoom, given this 28th day of September 2021, signed Father Ramilo Mapaye, SVD, Vice President for Academic Affairs, Holy Name University. At this point, let us now welcome the next presenter. He is one of the faculty members of the College of Business and Accountancy. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give a virtual round of applause to Dr. Presiliano Echavia. Sir.
Okay, a pleasant day to everyone, to Father President Ruel F. Lero, to Father Ramil Mapaye, to the deans and chairs of the different departments, specifically our very energetic Dean, Dr. Jane Mahay, to our distinguished panel of reactors, to our guests, faculty members of HNU, and our students, good morning. On behalf of my co-researchers, may I present to you our study on the corporate social responsibility practices of selected higher educational institutions in Bohol, Philippines. So in as much as we are not given a specific format as to our presentation, I opted to use the format we were using in the presentation that I participated last May of this year. Changing times made influences on business organizations. Corporate social responsibility is construed as a critical strategic instrument that redefined the way businesses operate in a globalized setting. It also became a prominent issue for higher education in promoting the development of civic values and responsibility, as reflected in the study of Kobe et al. In 2010 and cited by Luan Singh in 2019. As the higher education market changes, colleges and universities need to build stronger strategic relationships with their stakeholders in order to stay competitive. In the Philippines, the Commission on Higher Education requires that each EIs must perform the trifocal function of instruction, research, and community extension where CSR takes place. Most studies involving CSR focused on non-academic institutions. Each EIs as a business operations also have to fulfill CSR as valuable and necessary strategy in the competitive academic environment of today. This study is conducted to determine how employees of an academic community understand corporate social responsibility and make assessment on its implementation. This research study will also fill the gap by looking into the level of awareness and the extent of manifestation as to how the selected HEIs address, and implement their CSR practices based on the knowledge, perception, and attitude of employees. For our literature review, this study is anchored on two interrelated theories on business ethics, the CSR theory and stakeholder theory. Many researchers believe that some ideas of stakeholder theory can be helpful to CSR theory and vice versa. CSR theory has its roots in stakeholder theory, as mentioned in the study of Carroll and cited by Lee in 2012. Fitzpatrick 2013 cited that the number of corporate social responsibility practices related to shareholder proposals has significantly increased in recent years, along with the number of monetary volumes of socially responsible funds. Freeman in 2017 mentioned that whenever business ethics is given emphasis, either in terms of scholarships or the discipline taught in business schools or the organizational norms applied in many companies, both CSR and stakeholder theory come as two major concepts. Some saw these concepts as somewhat conflicting and competing views on the field, while others still built their arguments on the complementarity of corporate social responsibility and stakeholder theory, as mentioned by Rasso and Pireni in 2012. I'm sorry. In a study conducted by Medallion in 2014 on CSR programs of 4 private universities in the Philippines, he cited that community extension was integrated in the curriculum to hone and develop among their students the spirit of volunteerism and responsibility. Niliwar et al. In 2005 disclosed that under the highlights of globalization, its EIs has to consider the competition in order to attract high-quality students and academic staff, not only within national borders, but on international level. Zing in 2011, as mentioned in MUYA 2014, studied corporate social responsibility in 4 dimensions, and these are economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic responsibilities, and found out that CSR has significant effect on employee work and behavior. So we have here the relationship between the CSR and the stakeholder theory. So we have noticed that in stakeholder theory, it is being focused on the shareholders, both internal and the external stakeholders. While on corporate social responsibility, it is being centered on the surrounding society or society at large. So we have our problem statement. The study assessed the extent to which CSR practices of selected higher educational institutions in Bohol are manifested in terms of knowledge, perception, and attitude of employees. Specifically, it answered the following questions. What is the extent to which CSR practices are manifested among the selected HEIs in terms of the employees' knowledge, perception, and attitude? What is the extent to which CSR practices are manifested among the selected HEIs in terms of addressing the following economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropic responsibilities as assessed by the respondents? Is there any significant difference in the assessment of the respondents when grouped according to employment category and school affiliation? So based on the findings of the study, what proposal may be designed to improve the implementation of CSR practices and programs of the selected HEIs? The study is also guided by these hypotheses. There is no significant difference in the assessment of the respondents when grouped according to employment category and school affiliation. So for our methodology, the research design utilized a descriptive research method and employed an information and data gathering scheme to come up with sufficient discussion on the expected output. Our research respondents are employees of the different HEIs being selected. And the research instrument, there was a researcher-made questionnaire supplemented with unstructured interviews. A pre-test or dry run has been administered to determine the validity of the questions given. Data collected were interpreted using Cronbach alpha to assess internal consistency of the items. Data were gathered and analyzed using frequencies, weighted mean, standard deviation, the two-tailed t-test, and analysis of variance, or ANOVA, utilizing the statistical tool SPSS, or the Special Package for the Social Sciences. A 4-point Likert type scale has been used with the following hypothetical mean, range, and description. 3.26 to 4 is very great extent, 2.51 to 3.25 great extent, 1.76 to 2.50 less extent, and 1.0 to 1.75 no manifestation. So we have now the results. For the employees' knowledge on CSR practices, there was an overall weighted mean of 3.17 and interpreted as great extent. So this is an indication that the practices were manifested in most cases. It is noteworthy to mention that the following indicators out of 10 obtained the highest weighted mean: funding of arts and cultural activities, funding of employees' training and development, provision of health care benefits to employees, and funding of charitable contributions and donations with 3.39, 3.35, 3.27 respectively, and classified as very great extent. But there were also indicators with lowest obtained weighted mean, and these are funding of environmental projects, 2.87, and financial assistance to employees, 3.04, interpreted as great extent. For the employees' perception on impact of CSR practices, there was a weighted mean of 3.28, also interpreted to a very great extent. This is an indication that CSR practices are manifested in all cases. And the areas that obtain a remarkable weighted mean are: it enhanced schools' image and reputation, it enhanced community trust and confidence, it developed sense of responsibility and accountability with 3.64, 3.50, and 3.47, all interpreted as very great extent. But there were also areas that obtained a low weighted mean, and these are: provides favorable media coverage, and it helps increase revenue with 2.78 and 3.04 interpreted as great extent. For the attitudes towards CSR practices, it obtained a weighted mean of 3.45, again rated as very great extent, an indication of a favorable attitude by employees towards CSR practices. And the following areas showed impressive high weighted mean ratings: addressing the organization's pressing needs, fair treatment of employees, adherence to good governance, and transfer of CSR knowledge through volunteerism with 3.51, 3.47, 3.46 interpreted as very great extent. For the delivery of economic, legal, ethical, and social responsibilities, it has the following weighted mean. For economic is 3.39, legal is 3.47, ethical is 3.43, and philanthropic 3.36, interpreted as very great extent. So we have here the assessment of the respondents using paired t-test. So in this particular assessment or table, employees were categorized as to employment category. So we have here two sets of columns, the admin and the admin department heads, and the rank and file and the faculty members. So you have noticed two colors here, no? The orange and the blue color. So for the indicators under the orange color, it signifies an acceptance of the null hypothesis because all the p-values are higher than the accepted level of significance, which is 0.05. So this means that our null hypothesis has been accepted, meaning there is no significant difference as to the responses of the admin and department head employees. Now, for the blue colors, they rejected the null hypothesis, which means that there is a significant difference as to their responses. Now, it is interesting to know that the rank and file and faculty unanimously gave these ratings that rejected our null hypothesis, meaning there was a significant difference as to their responses. For the assessment using the analysis of variance, so in this particular table, we have classified the respondents according to their school affiliation. So there are three schools here: School A, School B, and School C. So again, all the colors with orange highlighted are those areas or indicators wherein our null hypothesis are being accepted. So meaning the schools have showed that there is no significant difference as to their responses. But for the blue ones, they have rejected the null hypothesis because the p-values are lower than the level of significance. So we have our recommended enhancement program. Since the funding of environmental and community projects obtain a low weighted mean of 2.44 and 2.76, we recommended this integrated solid waste management program. Can I just have my conclusion? There is a need for higher educational institutions to recognize that their CSR practices and programs must reflect with the values and norms which they claim to be known for. This can be achieved when their commitment to CSR is heightened in both operational and academic level, expected to benefit not only the selected HEIs, but the entire community as well. So again, on behalf of my co-researchers, we thank you, the Center for Research and Publication, HNU, and to all of you who are present in this research colloquium. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ichavia, for your very interesting research presentation. To react to the said presentation, we have invited the Education Supervisor of the Commission on Higher Education of Region 7. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give the virtual floor to Dr. Josefino Ronquillo.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Hello, good morning, everyone. Good morning to the family, and of course to our partners for quality higher education from the Holy Name administrators, and I think Dr. Hai is here, and thank you, Dr. Espiritu, for inviting me for this research colloquium, specifically to the presentation of Dr. Prisciliano Ichavea on the corporate social responsibility practices of selected HIs in Bohol, Philippines. No? And of course, to other presenters and reactors, sugo sa maadjong pamatasan, maadjong adlaw sa atong tanan, mga kahigalan, kaigsuonan, o mga katawhan sa atong katilingban. Now, I have three notions to this presentation of Dr. Prisciliano. Firstly is, you have selected HCIs. Are they private? Because you're not mentioning that are they private or the public HCIs? So
Sir, of my three selected respondent schools, there were two private institutions and a state university. And
okay. Two private and one public, okay, or government. Now, so with this, I'm very much concerned because unique as it is, though you're similar to private, similar private, but there is a need to consider the respective HCI's vision, mission, goals, and objectives. Because you have the unique VMGO, you have to consider the VMGO, the VMG private one, private two, and then the VMGO of public. So what are the VMGOs considering to that effect? Because yun ang ano nila, the barometer and going through that what the thing that they wanted to touch in the future, in which that this CSR is a very good study using that theories. No, but you have to consider first where are they going to, and the BMGO will tell us. And there are all three different
BMGO sa akong dissertation.
Goals and objectives. Yes, vision, mission, goals, and objectives of private one, private HCI 2, and public HCI 1. Okay? You have to consider that because yun ang palaging ino-observe namin sa CHED. So where are you going to that? Because yun talaga ang pinaka roadmap of every HCI. So the VMGO, yan ang Biblia ng HCI. So you have to consider first with that. So before you but your study is already, I think you can connect on some alignments like that. So first you have to consider. Then second, congratulations for having the CSR theory and stakeholders theory. Am I right? Okay, so using all the two theories. So I am just curious that you made mention the globalized setting, but this scientists or specialists or authors, they're all foreigners. Am I right? Foreign authors? Okay. They're all foreign authors. Now, your study is in the Philippines, so therefore you have to connect into the number is what you made mention, globalized setting. So we are now, yes, we are now adapting the theory, theory adoption, wherein in our localized Bohol HCIs, and it's a global thing, ang impact niya. Now, may I follow up with all these theories that you have in a globalized setting, to what extent that the HCI or that business or operation of the HCI contributes to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the world transformation. What specific SDG does it belong? Because I really like with what you have made mention, globalized setting, but you have to attach that. Where can we claim that your corporate social responsibility practices in Bohol, selected SIs in Bohol, are now globally? Kasi when you present this to from the single blind to the double blind refereeing, we have to look into that. What is the relativeness or the relativity to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals for the world transformation? Yun ang palaging nato scorecard to the whole world of all the 193 countries, member countries in the world of the SDGs na nadungagan na gani pag since 2020, nadungagan nagduha ka SDGs. The number 18 SDG is the multimedia technology and management, and number 19 is the COVID-19. Okay, so now you have to consider that because the COVID-19 is really struck us and challenging us up to now, how that HCI is running, and we know that everybody is affected now with that globalized setting. So the situation is global. Now its contribution and its reaction to that, the effect, no, the chain effect to that level. I think I think I could the SDG number 9, the industry innovation, because in all our research undertaking, innovation is there, no? And as emphasized in Trade Memorandum Order number 52, series of 2016, pathways to advanced research, innovation, extension, because CSR is an extension thing. That is why I am looking at the point that all the three, that they have different BMGOs, they become partners considering the 4 Ps in the globalized setting. The first P is the people, CSR, huh? So we are very much concerned with the people. The second P is planet, no? It's in your recommendation, yeah, I like it because that's the low value, that environmental concern yan. So that's the planet. So what are you going to do with the people and the planet? So there is prosperity because you're talking about business CSR, business social responsibility. The CSR, the two theories, no? CSR theory and the stakeholders theory. These stakeholders, they are drawing to all the world map in which that this low value that you have recommended, the environmental concern, has much thing or many things that these people should do. And of course, the peace, no? Kasi the peace, and also the last number 5, 5P is partnership. Dapat ang collaboration, research collaboration is being, so with this recommendation mo, I really like it because the low value in your study revealed, no? Observations revealed that at doing the degrees of freedom of 2 at 0.05 level of significance, blah, blah, blah. So it's manifesting that there will environmental thing, but how the proactive measures with these recommendations is partnership is the key with that recommendation. No man is an island, no man can stand alone. Wala tayong magagawa pag wala din ang ibang katao-tauhan. With the 5 Ps, dapat, no? The people, the planet, prosperity, the peace, and partnership. The 5 Ps, these are the key to this recommendation that you have the low value in your research research output presentation. So those are the 4 concerns that I am now reacting to you, that you have to know, so that when you present this to the international refereeing or even local refereeing, they're already particular of the sustainable development goals because of the globalized setting. We are on the internationalization thing. So it's a no skip anymore. We cannot say no. So it's our challenge now. So thank you very much. I think I am done with my nobina, short na to na nobina and litania. Because I have that many things in my mind, but the time does not permit, no? So, okay.
Thank you, sir, for that insights.
Thank you so
Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ronquillo, for imparting with us your knowledge and expertise on research. At this juncture, we would like to present to you a certificate of appreciation, which reads as follows. This certificate is presented to Dr. Josefino A. Ronquillo as reactor of the research entitled The Corporate Social Responsibility Practices of Selected HEIs in Bohol, Philippines during the Research Colloquium held on September 28, 2021 via Zoom, given this 28th day of September 2021, signed Father Ruel F. Lero, SVD, MAT, PhD, University President. Thank you so much, Dr. Ronquillo. A certificate of appreciation is likewise presented to our presenter, Dr. Prisciliano Echavia. It reads as follows. The certificate is presented to Dr. Prisciliano E. Echavia as presenter of the research entitled The Corporate Social Responsibility Practices of Selected HEIs in Bohol, Philippines, during the research colloquium held on September 28, 2021 via Zoom, given this 28th day of September 2021, signed Father Ramilo V. Mapaye, SVD, Vice President for Academic Affairs. Thank you, Dr. Ichavia. Before we proceed to the next presenter, again, we would like to remind the participants to sign in the attendance Google form, which is the link of which is indicated in the chat stream. And don't forget to rename your Zoom handle using the prescribed format, beginning with the institution, underscore your last name, and then followed by your first name. The next presenter is another full-time professor of the College of Business and Accountancy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all give a round of applause to the very dynamic and energetic Dr. Florita Acero, CPA.
To our Father President, Father Ruel Eflero, SVD, to our VP for Academic Affairs, Father Ramilo Magpaye, SVD, to our Dean in the College of Business and Accountancy, Dr. Gemma J. Hai, CPA, to the Director of the Center for Research and Publication, Dr. Maria Paz Espirito, to our panel of reactors, to our guests, especially those from other universities, and to our students, good morning. So the research that we have conducted prior to the pandemic is actually entitled The Business Practices Among Selected Adventure Tourism Enterprises in Bohol vis-a-vis Sustainability. With me in this humble undertaking is Dr. Ernesto Golosino. Okay, so one of the key concepts of this research is adventure tourism. What is adventure tourism? So according to Adventure Travel Trade Association, it is a tourist activity that includes physical activity, a cultural exchange, or activities in nature. It is about connecting with a new culture or a new landscape and being physically active at the same time. So why are we studying about adventure tourism? Actually, tourism in general is one of the major pillars of development in the province of Bohol, and it has contributed a bigger chunk of the revenue of the province. And according to Buckley et al. 2014, it's one of the fastest growing segments in the tourism sector over the last 20 years. And there are very few research studies conducted on sustainability in the local setting, and none so far had focused on adventure tourism enterprises. And one of the interesting facts in the adventure tourism industry in Bohol is that the two key players have actually unique ownership and organizational setup. One is privately owned, and the other big key player is an LGU managed company. Another key concept in the study is sustainability. In the context of tourism, it is usually termed as sustainable tourism. And according to the World Tourism Organization, sustainable tourism takes full account of its current and future economic, social, and environmental impacts, addressing the needs of visitors, the industry, the environment, and host communities. Now, why is sustainable tourism an issue for tourism establishments? First, massive tourist arrivals is putting greater pressure on already overstressed natural environment. Second, there are growing expectations on tourism establishments to help solve environmental and social issues from government, from its customers, and the public in general. And how tourism establishments respond to these expectations or trends will influence their profitability and longevity. Now, this study is anchored on the 5 pillars of sustainable tourism. So the practices that are manifested by the respondents are actually aligned to each pillar. The first pillar is inclusive and sustainable economic growth. The second is social inclusiveness, employment, and poverty reduction. Third is resource efficiency, environmental protection, and climate change. Fourth, cultural values, diversity, and heritage. And fifth, mutual understanding, peace, and security. Now, in the application of sustainability, it's actually being applied at different levels. It can be applied at the national level, at the regional level, or at the local level. Now, in the context of the study, the sustainable practices or sustainability is applied in the level of the organization. So the research objective is to determine the extent to which sustainable business practices are manifested among the selected adventure tourism enterprises, Bohol, again aligned in the 5 pillars of sustainability. Methodology. The researchers employed quantitative and qualitative methods to get the needed information for this study. So to determine whether tourism establishments in the province of Bohol embrace sustainable practices, the researcher covered 2 institutions. One is run by a local government unit, while the other one is a privately owned entity. Primary data needed for this study were gathered using a researcher-made questionnaire through unstructured interviews among some of the respondents. Research findings. For the first pillar on sustainable economic growth, both the privately owned part and the LGU managed part have manifested the practices to a great extent. So the results reflects high manifestation of the following practices: marketing and promotional activities, obtaining information as to what their visitors are looking for, adapting to new trends and tastes of current guests, providing a satisfactory experience for visitors, and giving importance to the quality of every part of visitor experience. So this results actually gives us a glimpse of the fact that the respondents recognizes that their ability to meet visitor expectations could actually result to higher revenue. The second pillar is social inclusiveness, employment, and poverty reduction. The result shows that for the private-owned part, these practices are manifested to a moderate extent, while for the LGU-managed part, the practices on social inclusiveness, employment, and poverty reduction are manifested to a great extent as perceived by the respondents. For the private-owned part, they solely vested decision-making process with its owners. So they do not provide any opportunity for local residents to join and participate in the decision-making process for tourism activities. The park or private-owned park also adopted open hiring policies and hired local workers to a less extent. So regardless of the location of the workers, for as long as they qualify as to the criteria for selection, the park actually hires them. So they do not prioritize local residents. Another is the park patronizes local products and services to a less extent. What is vital for this private-owned park is the quality of the products and services that they offer to their customers. As to where such local products comes from is not actually their concern. Okay, so they need not get it from local suppliers or those suppliers within their area. Another is the private-owned sponsors activities for health and social welfare in the community to a moderate extent. On the other hand, the LGU managed park has manifested significantly all the business practices that were intended to ensure community well-being as assessed by its employees. It involves the community members in the planning and implementation of tourism activities. These results reflect the core of the company's advocacy being an LGU-run community-based eco-adventure project, and that is to provide benefit to the municipality and its constituents. The third pillar is on resource efficiency and environmental protection. The results showed that the private-owned park manifested to a great extent those practices that actually attain to resource efficiency and environmental protection, while the LGU managed park has manifested these activities to a moderate extent only. So both companies, the similarities between the two in the manifestation of these practices is that both companies were perceived to place high regard in convincing tourists to exhibit responsible behavior in water and energy consumption, and the proper treatment of waste and reliable waste reduction programs. However, the use of designs and materials to maximize insulation was manifested to a moderate extent by both companies. Also, they gave less importance to reusing and recycling water. The private-owned park advances water and energy-efficient technology as well as their proper upkeep or maintenance and improvement, while the public entity was perceived to have paid lesser attention to investing in resource-efficient technology and proper maintenance and improvement of these facilities. The fourth pillar is on cultural values, diversity, and heritage. Both the private-owned park and the LGU managed park have manifested these practices to a moderate extent. Both respondents uphold the attractiveness of the natural and cultural environment. They endeavor to inculcate respect, codes of conduct, and provide tourists educational activities. The public entity or LGU managed park manifested to a great extent the use of traditional designs of its structure that match the natural landscape. The private firm, on the other hand, applied quality materials for its facilities and infrastructure with high consideration. In terms of controlling activities that will damage landscapes, the public entity is perceived to have given high emphasis on this endeavor compared to its private counterpart, wherein such activity is viewed to be manifested by the latter to a moderate extent only. In terms of mutual understanding, peace, and security, the private-owned park manifested these practices to a moderate extent, while the LGU managed park has manifested these practices to a great extent. So both respondents ensure the safety and security of visitors in the destination to a great extent, and they establish clear procedures for handling visitors' feedback and complaints. The public entity or LGU managed park provides education and training relevant to local residents to a great extent, while the private firm manifested this practice to a less extent only. The LGU managed park provides opportunity for discussion and decision-making among local residents, while the private-owned company manifested this practice to a less extent only. Conclusion. The selected adventure tourism enterprises differ in the extent of implementing sustainable practices in their business operations and did not necessarily reflect a balanced or harmonized implementation of the mantra espoused under the 5 pillars of sustainable tourism. Although the respondents have manifested sustainable business practices to a certain extent, the absence of a holistic approach in embracing the concept of sustainability will soon take its toll upon the entire operations of the firm. The hazy practices of exclusiveness will diminish community sympathy and empathy, and the absence of a robust mechanism in protecting the environment will yield enormous business consequences. Hence, collective efforts must be made by all stakeholders in addressing the vital call set forth under the 5 pillars of sustainable tourism. That's all for my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Acero, for your presentation. To react, we have invited the chairperson of the Bohol Provincial Tourism Council. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give the virtual floor to Attorney Lucas M. Nunag.
Mayong buntag sa tanan, and thank you especially to the HNU community, particularly the HNU Center for Research and Publication, for this privilege to participate in this virtual research colloquium on a topic that is dear to my heart, tourism and sustainability. And since this is my first time to dare comment on the work of luminaries in the academe, this exercise is an adventure for me. It feels almost like riding the bike zip at the Chocolate Hills Adventure Park. Indeed, adventure tourism is growing in popularity, especially among the young, hip, and active travelers, including millennials who are looking for thrills and excitement aside from the usual relaxing passive tourism activities. So, to add variety to its attractions and the following industry trends, Bohol is trying to grab a share of the market. And I thank Dr. Florita Acero and Dr. Ernesto Golosino for bringing the academic spotlight on adventure tourism, which is now a significant segment of Bohol tourism. The selected establishments are located in inland rural Bohol. And while both benefit from the natural beauty of their respective surroundings, the main focus or draw of their product offerings are the activities that involve the perception of risk and danger that produces adrenaline rush and may involve physical exertion. And owing to their setting, we can categorize this type of tourism as nature-based, and thus sustainability is a major consideration. Our researchers assess the operations of the selected enterprises on the basis of the 5 pillars of sustainable tourism as set by the UNWTO. And in brief, the research found that in several aspects, the 2 establishments, one public and the other privately owned, did not exactly measure up to the sustainability standards of the UNWTO, and with the privately owned entity showing an even less regard to the sustainability mantra. The research shows that when it comes to embracing sustainable tourism practices, particularly the first pillar, both establishments manifested practices that support sustainable growth. However, various other considerations tend to show that the LGU-run business tends to be a bit lax when it comes to business practices. In my opinion and experience, LGU-run businesses are generally not as economically sustainable as those which are managed by the private sector. Government processes are often cumbersome and may not be nimble enough to meet the financial and operational requirements of running a business. And the orientation of LGUs is public service, not business enterprise. And of course, political considerations always come into play with respect to staffing, purchasing, use of funds, not to mention the other vagaries of politics, including changes of administration and a comparison of the present conditions of the two facilities now will bear witness to this reality. The LGU site rated higher than the private entity in the area of social inclusiveness and community consultation, as well as providing benefits to the community. The income from the adventure park enabled the LGU to extend services not enjoyed by constituents of neighboring municipalities. On the other hand, the privately owned entity engaged in largely token CSR activities. There seemed to be no significant red flags as regards employment in both entities. But I see a risk in the altruistic slant of the LGU, which may clash with sound business principles and may prejudice the long-term economic sustainability of the enterprise. On environmental sustainability, the private entity fared well in using and maintaining resource-efficient technologies, while the LGU was perceived to have paid less attention to this aspect of operation. To be precise, an environmental audit would have given a more accurate picture of how these entities perform, particularly with respect to resource efficiency, waste management, conservation practices, pollution control, and reduction of carbon footprint. I note, however, that both entities do not undertake energy-heavy activities, as their attractions are not fossil fuel-driven, and there is minimal use of air conditioning in their public areas, which take advantage of natural ventilation. Both entities are perceived to have maintained the attractiveness of their natural and cultural environment, as this is their major selling point of their offerings. However, both seem to have paid less consideration to how their structures and development blended into their surroundings. With the public service orientation of the LGU operation, it did quite well in the area of mutual understanding and community relations. The privately owned entity admitted that they could do better in their CSR activities. And this is an area which could be a focus of improvement. In the bottom line of the research, the researchers mentioned that the two establishments may be on the road to perdition with their sustainability shortcomings. I'm not prepared to pass that rather harsh judgment, because I think there is hope for redemption for both entities when it comes to, for instance, carrying capacity, which both entities did not fare very well. The current crisis has actually addressed that issue, especially with new social distancing regulations. And we could also use this paper to perhaps influence or encourage the adventure park owners and operators to do better in their performance when it comes to sustainability. Daghang kayong salamat.
Thank you so much, Attorney Nunag, for your very insightful feedback about the research just presented. In appreciation, we are presenting you a virtual certificate of appreciation which reads as follows. The certificate is presented to Attorney Lucas M. Nunag as reactor of the research entitled Business Practices Among Selected Adventure Tourism Enterprises in Bohol vis-a-vis Sustainability during the research colloquium held on September 28, 2021 via Zoom, given this 28th day of September 2021. Signed, Father Ruel F. Lero, SVD, MAT, PhD, University President. Certificate of Appreciation is also presented to Dr. Florita Acero, CPA. The certificate reads as follows. Certificate of Appreciation. The certificate is presented to Dr. Florita D. Acero as presenter of the research entitled Business Practices Among Selected Adventure Tourism Enterprises in Bohol vis-a-vis Sustainability during the research colloquium held on September 28, 2021 via Zoom, given this 28th day of September 2021, signed Father Ramilo V. Mapaye, SVD, Vice President for Academic Affairs, Holy Name University. Before we proceed to the last presenter for this morning, again, I would like to remind all the participants to sign in their attendance using the Google Form link that is in the chat box. Moreover, reminder as well, we have an open forum at the end of the last presentation. If you have questions for any of the researchers presented this morning, you will be given an opportunity to ask them later on. Okay, so at this point, let us give a virtual round of applause to the next presenter. One of the full-time professors of the College of Business and Accountancy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Maria Paz Espiritu.
Can you see my slide?
Only a portion, Ma'am Pat. Murag na half.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good morning, Father Ruel Lero, SVD, Father Ramilo Mapaye, SVD, Dr. Gemma Hai, colleagues, academic partners, students, friends. I'm going to present a portion of the results of our research entitled Financial Management Practices of the Families of Overseas Seafarers in Bohol. This was a joint research undertaking conducted by Dr. Ernesto Godosino and yours truly, Dr. Maria Paz Espiritu. The Philippines is a large exporter of labor to the world. Based on the data of the Philippine Statistics Authority, there were 2.4 million overseas Filipino workers who worked during the period April to September 2015, 97% of whom were overseas contract workers, while the rest worked overseas without contract. OFWs are considered the country's modern-day heroes due to the remittances they make, which is considered as one of the drivers of the economy. As of 2015, Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas records revealed the total cash remittances of OFWs reached to $20.117 billion. Over the past 5 years, cash remittances have increased by an average of 6%. There are two major classifications of OFWs, namely the land-based workers and seafarers. Evidently, this study focused on the seafarers. Ay, teka, cannot move. Somebody is playing the music. Can you please mute? Who? Okay. Seafaring career was seen as a way out of poverty with the added attraction of earning dollars and seeing the world for free. Lemvik in 2002 said that migration in general is motivated by the high salary expectation to meet the family's needs. Family is the entity that initiated the actual migration. Filipino seafarers willingly make the sacrifice of separation to face solitude and hardship on board just to ensure that the families left behind will be better off. Based on the records of the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, as of March 31, 2016, there were 37,790 seafarers in Region 7 and 9,503 of these came from Bohol. Under the POEA contract, the Filipino seafarer is required to make an allotment of 80% of his basic pay payable once a month to his designated allotee. According to the standards, term, and conditions governing the overseas employment of Filipino seafarers on board ocean-going ships, seafarers' employment period, unlike land-based workers, does not exceed 12 months unless extended by the employer. Seafarers, therefore, do not earn continuous income. While at home, after a contract, they do not anymore earn dollars, but they need to fund the required trainings for them to qualify for employment or promotion. In the article, Why Some OFWs Remain Poor Despite Working Abroad, most OFWs earn higher than those locally employed. However, some of them are still financially hard up due to poor financial management. Inefficient financial management is a problem of OFWs in general and seafarers in particular. Some sectors express concern because remittances are used for extravagant consumption spending rather than for productive investment, based on the research done by Payoyo in 2017. Mishandling of family finances is one of the problems of seafarers who work overseas. This is an alarming issue, according to Kopor and Ecker in 2014, since financial matters affect not only financial, but also marital satisfaction and quality of life. Despite the gains of remittances, Arellano et al., as cited in Reyes in 2008, maintained that there is not much tremendous improvement in the lives of the families. The money being sent is just enough or sometimes hardly meet the demands and needs of the family left behind. Alarming stories can be heard of families of overseas seafarers with debts so huge to pay, assets mortgaged and foreclosed, and marital relations strained caused by the spouse's mismanagement of funds and other financial issues. Studies in 2015 said that huge debts and lack of concern to save are blamed for the financial problems of Filipinos who work abroad. Indebtedness starts when the seafarers borrow money from loan sharks to pay for the high placement fees. Starting a life overseas and leaving the family with debt is unfortunate. In addition, the overseas families do not have the will to save. Learning from the previous studies, it is evident that personal financial management is an important tool to improve the quality of life of the families of overseas seafarers in Bohol. Garman and Fergo define personal finance as a study of personal and family resources considered important in achieving financial success. It looks into people's spendings, savings, protection, and investments to optimize one's financial conditions. To put these concepts into action, a personal financial plan needs to be made. According to Redhead, a financial plan contains budgeting, managing liquidity, financing large purchases, long-term investment, and insurance. Cabrera defines financial management as a decision-making process concerned with the planning, acquiring, and utilizing funds in a manner that achieves one's desired goals. Sound financial management is needed in order to survive and flourish. According to Garman and Fergo in 2012, financial goals are rarely achieved without making sacrifices on current consumption. One has to forgo some of his or her wants in order to save, which will enable him or her to invest more. The biggest challenge in personal financial management is how to optimize positive cash flows over time. Since financial management has a wide scope, only 4 areas are considered, namely budgeting, recording, and cash management. Budgeting is concerned with the division of income between spending and savings, or it is a plan on how to spend one's money. Budgeting involves the setting of goals, identifying the sources of funds, determining how the money will be spent, adding up the sources of funds against the expenses, and making adjustments when disbursements exceed sources. Bookkeeping is the recording of all financial transactions and events, either manually or electronically. Sound record keeping needs to be done in order to determine one's financial health and condition. Up-to-date and accurate financial recording will provide relevant information on where one stands in a given period. According to Wagoner, financial control can be executed by comparing actual expenses to what was estimated to be spent. It sets rules and procedures which guide a household on what should happen, who can do it, when, and how. It is an important way of monitoring the financial health or condition of a family in accordance with its financial goals. And lastly, cash management involves the efficient collection, disbursement, and temporary investment of cash. Cash, as a liquid asset, needs to be managed properly to guarantee its use based on its intended purpose. The plight of the families of seafarers ignited the interest of the researchers to conduct this study in the context of Bohol. The researchers found out that there is a dearth of related studies in the past. This study aimed to first determine the financial management practices of the families of overseas seafarers in terms of the 4 areas of financial management, namely budgeting, recording, controlling, and cash management. And second, to propose an intervention to improve the financial management skills of the families of overseas seafarers in general. For the methodology, the respondents of the study were the legal spouses or live-in partners or family members of overseas seafarers who handle the finances of the family. In the selection of the respondents, the criteria used were first, their geographical location, and second, their spouses' length of work experience abroad as seafarers. For the first criterion, which is geographical location, specific allocation of respondents were assigned to Tagbilaran City and the 3 congressional districts of Bohol. Since the study had a province-wide coverage, 60 respondents in total were covered in the study, where half of the respondents, 30, came from Tagbilaran City, while the remaining samples were equally distributed among the 3 districts, as shown in the table. For the second criterion, the spouse's length of work experience as seafarers, the length of work was classified into 3, namely, less than 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and more than 10 years. Since Tagbilaran City was allocated 30 respondents, they were equally distributed to each of the classification, so 10 per each. For the districts, since each district was allocated 10 respondents, 4 respondents had seafarer spouses who had worked for less than 5 years, 3 for 5 to 10 years, while another for more than 10 years. A questionnaire was crafted and pre-tested by the researchers. Financial practices were given, and respondents were asked to rate each practice as always done, moderately done, sometimes done, or not done at all. For the results and discussions, budgeting is a plan on how to spend one's money. Given the various budgeting practices, only the practice of ensuring that the expenses would not exceed the remittances was always done by the respondents, while setting aside every month for recreational expenses was only done was only sometimes done by them. The rest of the financial practices were moderately done by them, resulting to a factor average of moderately done for budgeting. Record keeping or bookkeeping is the recording of all financial transactions and events, either manually or electronically. None of the record keeping practices were always done by the respondents. Half of the 6 practices were moderately done, while the other half were sometimes done, which yielded a factor average of moderately done for record keeping. Financial control serves as a guide on what should happen, who can do it, when, and how. None of the financial control practices were always done by the respondents. 6 out of the 7 financial control practices were moderately done, and only 1 was sometimes done. Cash management involves the efficient collection, disbursement, and temporary investment of cash. Of the 8 cash management practices presented to the respondents, none of these were always done, 2 were moderately done, 3 were sometimes done, and 2 were never done. The factor average for cash management is sometimes done. A proposed intervention is presented to improve the financial management practices of the fund holders of the overseas sea workers who are generally their spouses. In doing so, their families will be financially secure, which makes the physical separation of the overseas seafarers with their families worth sacrificing. It is proposed that a one-day seminar workshop be conducted for these fund holders. This module will be lodged at the Holy Name University to the Center for Community Extension, Linkages, and Partnership. The conduct of the seminar workshop shall be in close coordination with the Stella Marie Seafarers Wives and Families Association, Bohol Chapter, Department of Labor and Employment, and Overseas Workers Welfare Administration. HNU will be the implementing partner, while DOLE and OWA will be tasked to organize the activity. So this is the design of the one-day seminar workshop. So we have the registration, and then 9 to 9:30, we have the preliminaries. We will have different inputs in the morning. Inputs, just short inputs, the joys and pains at sea. And then we have another input, dreams and frustrations of the overseas seafarers. And then after the snack break, we have another input on the importance of managing money, how to handle money, budgeting, the concept of frugality. Before the lunch break, we will have a workshop on know and adjust your finances. So we look into the sources of income and the detailed expenses of the family. So after the lunch break, there's going to be a group discussion on the sharing of learnings and realizations. This is highlighting on the value of budgeting. 1:30 to 2:10, an input on the steps to simpler record keeping. And then another input, setting up a basic financial filing system. And there's going to be an exercise for 20 minutes, stay or to go, and then snacks, and then an input on gaining financial control, another input on understanding the concept of savings and investing, and lastly, they will be asked to do some planning and commitment, looking ahead with a dream map. And then there's going to be an evaluation of the activity. As a conclusion, at the end, the researchers concluded that the good financial management practices in the areas of budgeting, record keeping, financial control, and cash management were not extensively practiced by the fund holders. This lack of concern for wise spending and managing income may affect family finances, since financial success can only be achieved if sound financial planning will be consistently made. Recommendations. The researchers recommend the simplified financial management seminar workshop that I just presented be implemented to assist the fund holders in their greater responsibility of handling the finances of the family. And there is an existing association composed of the wives of the overseas workers. So the membership of this association should be strengthened so that more fund holders will become recipients of whatever training that they can give. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Espiritu, for your presentation. Your research topic is indeed something that is very relatable to many of our participants. To react, we have invited the Director of Migrants and OFWs of the Diocese of Talibon. Let us all give a virtual round of applause for our reactor, Father Jose Conrado A. Estafia.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So can you hear me?
Good morning,
Yes,
Father.
Father.
Yeah, I was running from my room to my office here in the seminary because my room, the signal stopped. So I was really cramming, but I was here for the whole talk of Dr. Patpat. So thank you, Dr. Patpat. And I don't know why you invited me to be a reactor. Maybe because, yeah, I am the OFW director of the Diocese of Talibon. I was only appointed last year. And it's the first time that we established this ministry in the diocese. So I don't have really, no, I'm not really, I don't have training in financial management, so I cannot really react on this area of financial management. But as I was listening to your topic or to your discussion, Dr. Patpat, so I was struck by this area where at the beginning you were telling us about the effects, sad effects or consequences of financial mismanagement or poor financial management among OFW families or especially seafarers. It affects marital life satisfaction and this quality of life. And I think this is where my area would come in because I'm a priest. So also one of the objectives of the ministry, ministering to our OFWs or seafarers, both land and those who are seafarers. So ministering to them would involve these themes or these topics. But I won't really comment now regarding the financial management because I don't have training in this area. But just a question, no, not really a question, just a kind of information that among our seafarers in the Diocese of Talibon, there are 2 towns, I think, Hagna. We have strong seafarers organization in Hagna and Serabolyones. I don't know in your study, Purpat, someone came also from these areas, Hagna and Serabolyones. And in Serabolyones, I heard from the former priest or parish priest before in Serabolyones that they have the organized seafarers and they also have a like of cooperative, hindi much cooperative, but that's, I don't know, it's like a sinking fund where they have funds and where they can borrow these funds from this group. If you are a member of the seafarers group, of this group, you can always borrow money from this group. But you are also part of the investor. Maybe it's something like a cooperative, but I'm not really sure what this cooperative is, or I'm not really sure. But I think it's one way also because we are also aware really that kanang galisod yun ng uban kay gasto way klaro, so poor financial management and the study is really relevant and really important. And regarding the recipients or the respondents of the study, more from Tagbilaran, I think there's also difference when you live in a city and when you live in the rural area. So maybe there's also, I don't know if it is reflected in the studies, but I won't go into that, Dr. Pat. So I will go immediately to, I'm interested in the seminar because as I've said earlier, we only started our ministry, ministering to our OFWs and migrant workers here in Bohol, especially in the Diocese of Talibon, also the seafarers, and there's so many seafarers. I already have consultations with them in the different vicariates or different districts in the diocese. So I have consultations with them, and one that came out during our consultations is to create a cooperative among our OFWs. I don't know how to do that, and maybe it's good also that you invited me, Dr. Pat, and so that I can collaborate with you, with the university, so that you can help me create maybe a kind of cooperative, but I don't know how to term it that way. Maybe I don't know if it's really a cooperative. Pero siguro ka na bang na-analyze na existing funds na magamit dito, but maybe one way also so that they can save money, and I don't know how to do that. Maybe my suggestion, maybe can I ask, is your seminar workshop ongoing, or is it ongoing? Because in the diocese now, we are planning to create a team, and this team would go to the different vicariates in the diocese to discuss about pastoral program. As of now, we still don't have any pastoral program. We are still in the process of consultations, but because of COVID-19, so it's very slow. Because I'm also very careful, and I don't want people to get infected also when we gather always. And also it's difficult to have online seminars, especially when you are in the rural areas. So maybe I can tie up with the Holy Name University so that you can help me in creating a team, especially to give seminars on financial management, maybe. And I don't know if it will be very possible. And I'm very, very happy, and I will tell the bishop also, I will tell the clergy that I'm collaborating with Holy Name University, and also because I'm also part of the university, being a part-time professor. So I think that's all. And maybe the financial management, we will include it in our pastoral program, because we are really proposing a holistic formation or an authentic human development, not only regarding the spiritual aspect or the psychological aspect of the person, but also regarding money matters. And as we know, this is one of the big problems facing our seafarers and OFWs at large. So once again, thank you, Dr. Pat, for the study, and I hope we can discuss more.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father Estafia, for your for imparting to us your feedback about the research just presented. In appreciation, we are also giving you this virtual certificate of appreciation, which reads as follows. This certificate is presented to Father Jose Conrado A. Estafia as reactor of the research entitled Financial Management Practices of the Families of Overseas Seafarers in Bohol during the research colloquium held on September 28, 2021 via Zoom, given this 28th day of September 2021, signed Father Ruel F. Lero, SVD, MAT, PhD, University President. Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
We look forward to working with you in forwarding your advocacy. The same certificate is also not the same as certificate, but another certificate is also given to the presenter, Dr. Maria Paz J. Espiritu. It reads as follows. The certificate is presented to Dr. Maria Paz J. Espiritu as presenter of the research entitled Financial Management Practices of the Families of Overseas Seafarers in Bohol during the research colloquium held on September 28, 2021 via Zoom, given this 28th day of September 2021, signed Father Ramilo V. Mapaye, SVD, Vice President for Academic Affairs. At this point, we are now, before we proceed to our open forum, allow me to read the concluding statement of our reactor, Dr. Quirog, our first reactor. Earlier this morning, he got cut off due to the power interruption. So let me just read in verbatim his concluding statement. Allow me to wrap up. Responsibility for greenhouse gases is 86% of from the richest half of the earth and the remaining 14% from the poorest half. As rightly pointed out by Dr. Golosino, conserving Mother Earth is everyone's business, but greater obligations hang on the shoulders of world leaders, especially the superpowers. In fact, such observation finds a biblical basis in Luke chapter 12, verse 48, to whom much is given, much will be required. While we try to be value-free in our research, we cannot truly escape our biases. I wish the study had other sources outside of the pro-neoliberal capitalist studies that would be in keeping with our stand as a Catholic Christian institution, trailblazing excellence in educating servant leaders, who obviously will have a preferential option for the poor. Dr. Golosino concluded that the Kyoto Protocol was a beautiful masterpiece, only to be besmirched by the irreversible consequences of non-cooperation. Let me assert that the Kyoto Protocol was an honest attempt among the environmentalists and pro-human sectors among global players to come up with solutions, but they were simply overwhelmed by the competing global neoliberal capitalist interests. In closing, let me say there is no planet B. We as one humanity will have to agree on solutions to this climate crisis or emergency. To quote Joe Fortune, General Secretary of the UK Cooperative Party, it's no longer enough to talk about climate change. We are in a climate emergency and our actions should reflect this. Pray, hope, and don't worry. Maayong buntag natong tanan. Special thanks to Ma'am Patpat. From Dr. Bonnie Quirog, Secretary, to the Sangguniang Panlalawigan, part-time faculty member of the HNU Political Science classes and graduate school. Thank you so much, Dr. Quirog. Now, at this point, we will now have our open forum. Should you have questions to be directed to any of our presenters this morning, please feel free to click the raise hand button that you can find in your screen so that we will be giving you the opportunity to ask them. Anyone? Do we have questions coming from the CBA faculty?
Ma'am Gemma
Or-
and Ma'am Gemma.
Ma'am Gemma, okay.
Thank you. This is not a question, but rather an offer of service. In terms of the seminar on financial management for overseas Filipino workers, families of OFWs, I was given a training of trainers by Atika, and I have a lot of materials, and I would like to offer my help to enrich the training workshop to become more real for their specific cases. A personal level ang ilahang budgeting, and even for retirement, naa sila, the workshop is really designed that detailed. So I would like to offer my services for the enrichment of the seminar workshop. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hai. Do we have questions from our student participants? Again, please feel free to click the raise hand button so that you will be given the floor. Okay, so it seems as if no one has questions for the presenter, so we will just proceed to the finale part of our activity today. So let me call on our very inspiring head of our CBA family. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all give a round of applause for the very dynamic Dr. Gemma J. Hai, CP.
Emily, I think Remark is raising his hand.
Okay. Sir Remark? Sorry, I find it difficult to look at the, to view the,
Hello, Ma'am M. Sorry.
yes,
Third, ma'am.
yes.
Um, this question actually is directed to Dr. Golosino because I find this one very just out of my curiosity, sir. Regarding the
Yung audio remark is
I'm sorry.
not clear.
For a while. Hello, can I, ma'am?
Yeah. Yes, we can hear you, Sir Remark.
My question is, actually, I am doing some study right now regarding carbon trading and sustainability, and it is mentioned by Dr. Golosino earlier. Although I am using a different framework on sustainability issues lang. My question, sir, is just out of curiosity, what do you think is the overall problem of Kyoto Protocol? And in your opinion, how can it be possibly resolved, knowing that you have mentioned in your conclusion earlier that this is a beautiful masterpiece? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Montalban, for that question. There are 2 points there. The first point, Kyoto Protocol actually failed because of the absence of the police power of the convener, which is the United Nations Framework for Climate Change. But there are other protocols that evolved after it. The latest was in France, but still they are trying to haggle and, if the term is proper, coerced United States of America and Russia to take the lead because they are not actually doing their share for carbon footprint reduction. As to the other point that you are making a research on carbon footprints or carrying capacity, if I may answer it indirectly, there are so many rich materials about carrying capacity and ecological footprints. And we can actually localize it because there are localized versions of carrying capacity and ecological footprints at that matter. To end my answer, indeed, Kyoto Protocol is a beautiful masterpiece, but the word beautiful there comes with sarcasm, not from me directly, but from the authors who influenced me. That again, everything is there. The only issue is the implementation of the police power of the convener, which is the UNFCCC, which according to some political analysts cannot move because they are actually under the shadow of the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Golosino. Sir Remark, are you satisfied with the answer? Can we proceed?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Golosino. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so before we proceed to the closing remarks of Dr. Hai, may I see other people who might have other questions as well? Okay, so I think we can now proceed to the closing remarks. Again, let's give a round of applause to Dr. Gemma J. Hai, CPA.
Thank you, Ems. I don't know how to close this activity, but an angel whispered to me this morning. I read a text. Actually, this is a saying, a quotation from the LRC meeting this morning, which I also simultaneously attended, that to give light, there are actually two ways. You would either be the candle or the mirror that reflects the light. Our researcher presenters this morning are our candles. They give out the original light, and we 200 warm bodies and more who just witness the presentation would constitute the mirrors that would reflect the researchers' presentations. How we will live the results or the findings of the research. Like maybe this could create a deeper awareness for us to take care of the environment in our own little ways as households. We should not think of the country as a whole, but we will do our part. And so with sustainable tourism, and also a deeper awareness of outreach and social responsibility in our lives. And most importantly, and the last but not the least, being able to manage our financials a little better. And may this, light which we have reflected would also inspire us to do research on our own and be able to carry the candles ourselves. In closing, I would like to congratulate the Center of Research and Publication of Holy Name University, headed by my neighbor, Dr. Espiritu, for having seen partial outcomes of the research culture that they have intended to develop in HNU. And also, I would like to congratulate with deep pride our presenters this morning. I know there are still a lot of researchers which have not been presented. Wa pa ma-appeal diri sa atong sa atong colloquium. I could remember Cecil's research, and I know that there will be more. Hopefully, me included. Okay, and let us, with one hand, carry on under this new normal. We still are able to excel in whatever we want to do as academicians. Students, salamat kaayo for heeding to our call. I hope you were inspired by your faculty members. And I would also like to thank very deeply our reactors, our external stakeholders who participated in our colloquium. I am deeply, touched by how you have prepared and how you have reacted to the presenters. Thank you very much. This was all, an effort and an activity of deep passion and love. Congratulations, everyone. And that is my closing remarks. Good morning. Emily?
Thank you so much, Dr. Hai. So in behalf of the administrators of HNU, the Center for Research and Publications, the College of Business and Accountancy, I would like to thank everyone, especially those coming from other institutions outside, for gracing our activity this morning, as well as to our students as well. Thank you so much. I am sure that all of us learned something new today. This is just a reminder. This is only the first of a series of research colloquium that will be organized by the Center for Research and Publications. Please just stay tuned for more information about the next schedule. Let me end this activity with a saying: never stop learning because life never stops teaching. Thank you so much for your attendance today, and keep safe always. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ems. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thank you, Ma'am.
God bless. Group photo, Ems, can we have a group photo for documentation?
Okay, so for documentation purposes, I would like to request all attendees, participants of today's research colloquium to please turn on their video, because somebody will take a group picture of all of us. Thank you.
Miss Vera, ikaw ha? Miss Vera, can you take a photo?
Saan sa recording?
Huh?
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you, everyone. God bless. Keep safe.
Bye. Thank you, Sir Jojo, Attorney Nunag, Father, and then si Bonnie. Thank you. God bless.
Hi, sir. Hi, Dana. Bana. Yeah.